So, in late 2011, Amazon launched this new piece of hardware, and it sold nearly 5 million units in just over 3 months.
Which is just a massive number.
Right. I mean, right out of the gate, it captured 14% of the global tablet market share.
Yeah.
By pretty much all conventional business metrics, it was a smash hit. So, naturally, Wall Street instantly hit the panic
Oh,
button.
yeah, they completely freaked out.
Amazon's stock price just plummeted, like by $40 to $45 a share.
It is such a wild reaction. But that disconnect, between the consumer enthusiasm and the investor terror in that specific moment is just this perfect lens into modern corporate strategy.
Exactly. Welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Today, our mission is to unpack this really fascinating 2014 Kellogg School of Management case study.
Yeah, it details Amazon's high-stakes entry into the tablet market with the Kindle Fire.
And we are going to explore how a company that is, famous for selling physical books decided to sell sophisticated electronics essentially at cost.
Basically giving them away.
Right. Inviting the total wrath of their investors, all to build this velvet cage for consumers, like for you and me.
And the core question we are looking at is whether this massive gamble was a stroke of visionary genius or, maybe a step too far that endangered their whole business.
So, to understand why Wall Street punished what was obviously a hit product, I feel like we first have to examine Amazon's foundational philosophy, right? And their rather turbulent history with hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, back in 2011, Amazon was already an e-commerce titan. They started in Jeff Bezos' small garage, but 15 years later, they were operating 25 million square feet of warehouse space.
That is just incomprehensible size.
It really is. And they controlled 10% of the entire North American e-commerce market by then.
But, and this is the kicker, their path to profitability was famously, almost comically, slow.
Oh, incredibly slow.
It took Amazon 6 full years just to post a single profitable quarter.
Yeah, and Bezos actually addressed this directly in his 2010 letter to shareholders. He stated simply, invention is in our DNA.
Right.
Amazon consistently poured capital into emerging opportunities, years or sometimes even decades before they would ever see a return.
Like AWS.
Exactly, Amazon Web Services. By 2012, AWS represented a mere 3% of their total sales. But they were projecting it to triple in revenue because they were quietly building the cloud infrastructure for the entire internet.
Which is so funny because the investors, meanwhile, were just looking at these quarterly sheets asking, where is the immediate profit?
Yeah, they were entirely focused on the short term.
It paints this picture of like Amazon as this visionary farmer meticulously planting an orchard that is meant to be harvested in 10 years. And the impatient Wall Street investors are just standing at the edge of the dirt screaming at him to sell the seeds today.
That is a perfect analogy. And that tension was nowhere more obvious than in the e-reader market, because before 2007, digital books were just this microscopic niche.
Like a novelty almost.
Yeah, they made up less than 1% of all books sold, amounting to a tiny $3 million industry. The market leader at the time was the Sony Reader, which cost up to $399.
And based on the case study, using one of those early ones just sounds like a complete chore.
Ah, it was awful.
The hardware was super clunky. You have to physically connect it to a desktop computer with a cable just to, load a file onto it.
Right, and even the ergonomics were deeply flawed. It was hard to just turn a page with one hand.
So then, November 2007, Amazon introduces the first Kindle. They match Sony's price point, $399. But the execution just fundamentally shifts the paradigm.
It really did.
The device featured an e-ink screen for reading in direct sunlight, and crucially, it included this feature called WhisperNet.
Yes, the cellular service.
Right, built-in EVDO cellular service. You didn't need a PC. You didn't even need a Wi-Fi network. You could just sit on a park bench, buy a book, and it would wirelessly appear on the screen in seconds.
And that frictionless delivery system was so revolutionary that their initial production run sold out in 3 hours.
3 hours. But looking at the numbers from the source, something really stands out to me. The gross margin on that early Kindle device was barely 5%.
Barely breaking even.
Yeah, so Amazon did all this heavy lifting, they engineered a cellular device, and essentially decided, we are not going to make money on the physical plastic and glass. So were the investors right to be terrified here?
Well, the investors were terrified because Amazon was using the hardware as a Trojan horse.
Right.
That is the exact mechanism at play. The margin on the device was 5%, sure, but the gross margin on the ebooks they sold through the device was between 20 and 30%.
Ah, okay.
So Amazon sacrificed the upfront hardware profit to essentially place a permanent digital storefront directly into the consumer's hands.
And traditional hardware investors just could not compute that.
Not at all. They were used to companies making their money the moment a device was sold. Like, you buy a TV, the company profits. Amazon's deferred profit model deeply, deeply unsettled them.
Because Amazon was barely breaking even on the physical reader, their whole survival really hinged on dominating that content ecosystem, and competitors quickly diagnosed that vulnerability, right?
Oh, immediately.
Yeah.
Traditional booksellers recognized an existential threat. So in 2009, Barnes & Noble launched the Nook.
Right, the
It
no.
featured a 6-inch e-ink screen, native PDF support, wireless access. It basically directly mirrored the Kindle. However, Barnes & Noble priced it at $259.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, severely undercutting the Kindle 2, which was sitting at $359.
Which triggered this brutal price war, right? Driving the cost of basic e-readers under $100 by 2011.
Exactly.
And this is where Amazon's ecosystem strategy hardened into a real lock-in mechanism. I mean, think about it from your perspective as a reader. Amazon allowed you to buy a book once and read it anywhere, on a Kindle, an iPhone, or a PC via their apps.
Very seamless.
But if you bought an ebook from a competitor, Amazon made it incredibly difficult to format and actually read that file on a Kindle device.
So is that proprietary ecosystem a brilliant perk for you as a reader, or is it basically a velvet cage?
It is entirely about raising switching costs. The real war wasn't about the hardware at all.
Right.
If you buy one book on a Kindle, you might easily switch to a Nook for your next purchase. But if you build a library of 100 books on a Kindle,
You're stuck.
you are mathematically tethered to the Amazon platform. Barnes & Noble even tried to counter this by leveraging their physical real estate.
Oh yeah, the in-store Wi-Fi.
Yeah, they offered free in-store Wi-Fi, allowing anyone to walk into a physical Barnes & Noble store and read their entire digital library for free on a Nook. That is such a cool counter move. But Amazon just countered by altering the perceived value of books entirely. They started heavily subsidizing the price of digital books, aggressively pricing new releases at $9.99.
Which was unheard of.
Because new hardcover books traditionally sold for around $26. So Amazon's profit per title just plummeted from roughly $13 on a hardcover to just $3 on an ebook.
They were willingly absorbing a massive hit to their margins just to starve out the competition.
And the publishers absolutely hated this.
They really did. The publishing industry viewed this as a total erosion of their 100-year-old business model. They were terrified that consumers would permanently devalue literature if every new book cost $10.
Right, like why would you ever pay $30 again?
Exactly. So when Apple entered the market with the iPad and Barnes & Noble was gaining traction, the publishers seized an opportunity to change the rules. They introduced the agency-based pricing model.
Let's actually explore how that works because it changed the entire landscape. In a traditional wholesale model, a retailer buys a product for a set price and can sell it for whatever they want, right?
Right.
Even taking a loss to drive traffic.
Yes, but the agency model flicks that dynamic completely. Under this framework, the publisher dictates the final retail price to the consumer.
Okay.
The retailer, so whether it's Apple or Amazon, is legally bound to sell it at that exact price. They act merely as an agent who takes a flat 30% commission.
Meaning Amazon lost the legal ability to discount books and use them as loss leaders.
Precisely. Apple and the major publishers essentially forced Amazon to accept this model.
And we should note, according to the case study, this later resulted in high-profile antitrust and price-fixing lawsuits from the Department of Justice against Apple and the publishers. We aren't taking sides on the legal battle, just reporting what the case study details, but it shows how legally complex these ecosystem wars were becoming.
Oh, very complex. And Apple's entry didn't just disrupt book pricing, it upended the entire hardware market. Apple sold 15 million iPads in 2010 alone.
Wow.
And by March 2011, they released the iPad 2 as a premium machine, 9.5-inch screen, dual-core processor, starting at $499.
So Amazon found itself squeezed in this vice. Apple completely dominated the premium high-end tablet space, and Barnes & Noble was aggressively matching them in the low-end basic e-reader space.
They were getting attacked from both sides.
Yeah, Amazon needed a dramatic new weapon. And so enter the Kindle fire in September 2011.
The specifications for the Fire represent such a fascinating compromise. It featured a 7-inch color LCD touchscreen, 8 gigabytes of storage, and it ran on a highly modified version of Google's Android operating system.
Right.
And crucially, it utilized the Amazon Silk browser.
Right, the cloud-accelerated one.
Yeah, it routed traffic through Amazon's AWS cloud servers to accelerate web page loading, which was brilliant for a device with limited processing power.
But the defining feature was the price tag, $199.
Just incredibly cheap.
Because analysts tore the device down and estimated that the components and labor alone cost near $200. Amazon was selling this tablet essentially at cost.
Which is precisely how they captured 14% of the market, nearly 4 million units, in just the fourth quarter of 2011.
Instantly.
Yeah, momentarily challenging Apple's 57% share.
So I like to think of it this way. The iPad is a Swiss Army knife, right? It is meticulously engineered, does almost any computing task, costs a fortune.
Yep.
The Kindle Fire is a beautifully designed, highly subsidized vending machine that just happens to sit in your living room.
The vending machine analogy perfectly illustrates the razor and blade business model here.
Yeah.
Because Apple secures its profit margin the exact second you swipe your credit card to buy the iPad. Amazon, on the other hand, secures zero profit at the point of sale.
Not at all.
Right. Their profit relies entirely on the user actually using the device over months and years.
But doesn't that come with a huge risk? I mean, to hit that $199 price point, Amazon had to make technical sacrifices.
Oh, absolutely.
The case study notes that early critics complained the Kindle Fire could be laggy, it lacked physical volume buttons, and it had a shorter than advertised battery life. By releasing an unproven, maybe occasionally frustrating device, didn't Amazon risk alienating a consumer base that was used to Apple's flawless polish?
You would assume a laggy interface would just doom a tech product.
Right.
But Amazon was betting that an overwhelming value proposition would offset those technical hiccups. They realized they didn't need to defeat the iPad in a tech benchmark test.
Okay.
They only needed to find specific consumer segments who were eager for the exact services their digital vending machine provided. So they targeted 3 highly specific demographics.
The first group was media junkies, right? People who just churn through digital music, movies, streaming video.
Exactly. Amazon bundled a free month of their Amazon Prime subscription with every Kindle Fire, hooking them immediately on over 13,000 free streaming titles.
I do have to push back on the media junkie angle, though.
Okay, sure.
Because if you are genuinely obsessed with high-definition movies and intense mobile games, are you really going to willingly settle for a smaller 7-inch screen and, 512 megabytes of RAM just because it's cheap?
It does seem like a contradiction.
It seems totally at odds with what that demographic actually wants.
And tech reviewers at the time shared that exact frustration. But the behavior makes sense when you view it through the lens of the post-PC era.
What do you mean?
Well, the Kindle Fire wasn't designed to replace a 50-inch living room television or a high-end laptop. Nielsen research showed that 70% of all tablet usage occurred on the couch, and 57% took place in bed.
Ah, so it was an intimate, consumption device.
Precisely. It was built for convenience. You're lying in bed, you read a chapter of a thriller, stream a 30-minute sitcom, and maybe order a bottle of laundry detergent before turning off the lamp. The Fire did not need cinematic processing power. It just needed to be a frictionless conduit for those specific tasks.
That makes a lot of sense. So who was the second group?
The second group comprised children and mobile gamers. That same Nielsen research revealed that in 70% of U.S. households that owned a tablet, children under 12 were frequent users.
Mostly for gaming, I assume.
Exactly. But handing a toddler a $500 or $600 pane of glass is just a recipe for anxiety.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But a $199 price tag completely changes that parental calculus. Plus, the Fire featured a smaller screen made of durable Gorilla Glass, making it rugged and physically suited for smaller hands.
Smart. And then the third demographic was higher education.
Yes, representing a $10 billion untapped market.
College students were just desperate for a solution to expensive textbooks and, heavy backpacks.
And Amazon had actually previously attempted to capture this market with the Kindle DX.
Oh, I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it was a 10-inch device, but it failed largely due to its massive $549 price tag.
Yeah, that's way too much for a student.
And it was just a black and white display. Meanwhile, Barnes & Noble was actively partnering with university bookstores to offer Nook textbooks at steep discounts, like 30 to 50% off. So Amazon really needed the Fire to reclaim ground on college campuses.
Which brings us all the way back to the Wall Street panic at the beginning. We know who was buying this at cost hardware, but let's unpack how Amazon actually intended to pacify their angry investors.
Yeah, how they made the math work.
Right, how did the monetization engine actually function on a $199 device that yielded zero upfront profit?
Well, the strategy relied on four overlapping revenue streams: content, commerce, advertising, and apps.
Let's start with content.
Content was the most immediate lever. The hardware yielded nothing, but Amazon netted a 30% gross margin on digital media like movies and music, and a 20% margin on ebooks. The sheer volume of that content consumption offset the hardware subsidy over time.
Okay, then we look at commerce, right? The physical goods purchased on Amazon.com. The case study has this really staggering metric. Once consumers switched to a Kindle, they bought 3.3 times as many ebooks as they did print books.
Yeah, 3.3 times as much.
That isn't just about the price of the book, it's about the psychology of frictionless commerce.
Because the cognitive load of shopping is completely erased. Going to a physical store or even just booting up a laptop and opening a browser, it involves multiple steps and moments of hesitation.
Right, you have time to rethink the purchase.
Exactly. But a dedicated device, permanently logged into your account with stored credit card details, it bypasses the brain's filtering process. A book or a product arrives in 3 seconds with one tap.
And Bezos projected the Fire would replicate that exact frictionless psychology for physical retail, too. Internal estimates suggested that an average Kindle Fire user would spend $50 a month in incremental physical products.
Just because ordering from the couch was too easy to resist.
Yeah. And then the third revenue stream was advertising, and I find this one wild. They utilized this highly aggressive tactic where they transform the device's lock screen into a permanent digital billboard.
Every single time you woke up your Kindle Fire, you were presented with an ad.
Consumers essentially invited a corporate billboard into their house, onto their nightstand, just to save a few bucks on the purchase price.
And it was incredibly lucrative for Amazon. Millennial Media reported that the Kindle Fire drove a 19% daily increase in mobile ad impressions across its entire network.
19%.
Yes, that translates to roughly 300 million impressions a month. At an industry standard $10 CPM, meaning $10 per 1,000 views, that represents a colossal recurring revenue stream.
And if you found the ads unbearable, Amazon offered a solution, right?
Yeah, you could pay a $30 fee to permanently turn them off. So either the advertiser paid Amazon or you paid Amazon.
They win either way. Finally, there were the apps. Amazon sidestepped Google's Android ecosystem to create their own curated app store.
And in just 18 months, that store expanded from 4,000 applications to 50,000.
And following Apple's precedent, Amazon took a 30% cut of every single app sale and in-app purchase.
So when you synthesize those four streams, content, commerce, ads, and apps, it reveals the true nature of the Kindle Fire.
Right.
It was never conceived as a standalone piece of consumer electronics. It was the physical manifestation of the Amazon Prime subscription.
An ecosystem capture device.
Exactly. Meant to enclose you in a walled garden, ensuring you never had to leave the Amazon universe for entertainment or reading or shopping.
It completely reframes that stock drop we talked about at the very beginning. Wall Street was attempting to evaluate a traditional hardware company, and they saw these terrifyingly thin margins on a tablet.
But Amazon wasn't building a tablet. They were building a toll booth for modern consumer life.
Yeah, this Kellogg case study just perfectly illustrates how a $199 piece of plastic completely shifted the paradigm of retail. Proving that highly subsidized hardware could successfully act as a loss leader for a sprawling digital and physical empire.
It really altered the fundamental rules of consumer engagement, and I think it forces us to consider the logical extreme of this strategy moving forward.
Oh, totally. Like if Amazon proved that highly subsidized hardware can successfully serve as a permanent free storefront in our living rooms,
Right.
how long will it be until other massive industries adopt that same model?
Exactly. Will grocery conglomerates or fast fashion giants eventually start shipping us completely free, beautifully branded screens for our homes,
Yeah.
just to guarantee our absolute loyalty to their supply chains?
It is definitely something to mull over as you look around your living room today. Well, that wraps up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.